Hello again. In the third unit of this program, we concentrated on the expressions and terminology used for introducing people, as well as the language used in formal interviews. Let's start with the language for introducing someone at a formal event. And here there's not a lot of leeway or alternatives. There are set expressions that need to be used and can't be changed. The situation dictates the language that needs to be used. For example, a formal event, a conference, even a wedding. Basically, whenever you need to present someone to an audience. So we start with the opening, and it should go something like this.
It's my great honor to introduce our panelist for tonight, who joins us from Oxford University.
It's my great honor to introduce our keynote speaker from Yale University, who will address us tonight.
Or you could say, it's my pleasure or my privilege to introduce someone. And then you need to say a few words about this person. And the key here is the types of adjectives you use, describing words. Now, obviously, there's a reason that this person has been invited, and not just because you couldn't find anyone else. So here are some of the examples we used in the unit to describe our speakers.
She is involved with brain research. He is an esteemed colleague and has published extensively in leading journals.
Professor Brown is a renowned researcher in the field of neurology
And is proficient in 10 languages.
It is an honor to be working with her. His experiments with animals are cited in leading journals worldwide.
Now we need to hand it over to the speaker. This part should be short and to the point. Remember, the audience wants to hear the speaker, not necessarily to hear you. And again, there's a set way to close your introduction.
Without further ado, please welcome and give a warm round of applause to Professor Sine.
Now let's move to semi-formal and informal ways of introducing someone, and generally party talk. Now there are differences in culture, and in English-speaking cultures, there are 3 topics you don't talk about in public. Age, particularly for women, how much salary you earn, and politics. These topics are what we call taboo. Now, obviously, it's rude to just say, "Hi everyone, this is John." I mean, you need to give some more information. For example,
I'd like to introduce you to someone really dear to me, my boyfriend.
I would like to introduce you to my good friend Tarzan. What's fascinating about him is that he speaks 10 languages. You know, we met under interesting circumstances. He's a great guy to have around. He is an amateur musician and is also great at sports.
I met Sharon on my first visit to England 5 years ago. She's involved with research in maths.
and if, as in our case, you're telling someone about a colleague you want them to meet, and you're sure they get on well together, then a good colloquial phrase to use is,
I'm sure you'll hit it off.
"I'm sure you'll hit it off." And now we turn to the very important issue of job interviews. Now, we're not here to teach you how to interview someone or how to conduct yourself in an interview, but we will work on the formal and the standard expressions and phrases that will help you to make a good impression. This is not just vital for job interviews, but also interactions with colleagues. You need to be prepared to answer questions such as,
Have you had any previous experience working for a large, dynamic, international company? Do you have references? Why do you think you would be suitable for the position of project manager in our dental company? What brings you to our institution? And how do you feel you can contribute to our success?
our potential employee answers,
I have considerable experience as a project manager, having worked in this capacity for 2 years.
Note the adjective considerable. It really is more persuasive than saying, "I have a lot of experience." And note the great use of the perfect form to stress you have been working for 2 years in this capacity and still are. Instead of saying, "I thought" or "I think that," try a more formal use. For example,
But it is my understanding that you worked in a completely different field.
I appreciate being considered for this position.
this is a much nicer way of saying, "Thank you for inviting me to the interview."
I would like to clarify that most of the work is done in the dark.
Now, just by looking at this expression, you know it's more formal because of the would used. This phrase is great for summarizing or stating something and makes you seem smart. Instead of saying, That's nice to hear. Why not up your vocabulary and use the phrase,
It's refreshing to hear your positive attitude.
If a job's worth doing, it's worth doing well.
This is a proverb I grew up with, hearing it again and again whenever I try to get out of my chores. In other words, it means if you started something, then do it to the best of your ability. It's what we call a saying.
If a job's worth doing, it's worth doing well. I like to live dangerously, to live on the edge.
And in the same sentence, we have the idiom to live on the edge, to live dangerously. In this unit, we had an abundance of words used to describe attributes and skills needed for various forms of employment. It might be helpful to look at the different forms the words can be used. Trustworthiness is an important attribute. Would you consider yourself to be trustworthy? We require long-term commitment from our employees. Are you prepared to commit yourself for 3 years?
If you should get the job, you'd be working with European companies.
It doesn't mean that you have the job, but if it so happens that you do get the job, then this is what would happen. You probably vaguely remember this from your grammar lessons many years ago as a condition. Here's another example. If you should bump into John, please remind him about his promise. It's only a probability, but if you do meet him, if you should join our company, you'll be working with professionals. Learning grammar rules doesn't work for many language learners. I prefer to direct your attention to the structure and practice using it.
Can you handle it?
Well, I think so. Until next time.